No matter how big or small, there's at least one thing that doesn't make sense about every mission in GTA 5 story. So here we go, grab a snack and a bev as it's gonna be a long one, subscribe to become a follower, only 10% of y'all are subscribed, so help a brother out, thank you to my channel members, and let's dive in. Starting off with prologue. It never made sense to me as to why Michael didn't clearly walk ahead of the group after they got hit by a train to make it easier for Dave to get a shot on him so he could fake his death. The whole drama debacle happened because Brad was killed in the process of Michael's plan because he walked in front of him. To avoid this from happening, Michael should have clearly ran ahead a good bit and he could have said, hey guys, I'm gonna make sure the coast is clear, because they weren't far from the bank at this point, so that would have been a reasonable excuse to use. Make sure there's no cops and then they can continue. He was closely walking with the group, which made a slip up easy to occur, which is obviously what happened. This of course happened for the plot to add some tension between Michael and Trevor, but the plan was terribly executed by both Dave and Michael, Franklin and Lamar. When searching for the house, Lamar asks Michael, who he doesn't yet know, if he knows where it's at. The fact that Lamar asked this about two cars they were about to steal was just straight up reckless. Michael actually knowing was a bit of a surprise, but I guess because he knows the area, his shrink is right there, it probably makes sense. It's also strange how he doesn't recognize Franklin when he repos his car in the next mission. They actually never talk about this incident. I get that we see a lot of people every day and you forget 1,000 things every day, make sure this is one of them, but you remember faces within at least a week, right? Repossession. The plot for the mission Repossession is to repo the motorcycle of a Vagos member to force him to pay a lot of money for his bike back. However, the entire plan to repossess the bike was doomed from the start because Simeon as well as Franklin and Lamar all knew that this was a bad part of town with gang activity. They should have known it would be a shootout for the bike, and we end up killing the owner of the bike, which defeated the purpose of the mission because the whole point was to repo it to make the owner pay a lot of money to get it back, but he's dead now. Lamar ends up keeping the bike and giving it to Franklin later on, but their plan to repo it was once again executed terribly. Complications. Even as a kid, while I was playing the story, I always found it strange how Michael is just pretending to be a sack in the back of the BJ that Franklin repos. Was he expecting it to be repossessed? Mind you, the car is inside the garage of his home. Pretty sure it's not common practice to literally break into a house to repo a car. How did he know when Franklin would come anyway? Even if he did suspect a repo would occur, the whole mission felt like one big coincidence, but it did set up the friendship for Franklin and Michael, so it's fine I guess. Father-son. It always pissed me off how Amanda's car just decides to go into limp mode right before we are able to get Michael's boat back. It's so coincidental because the whole time chasing the boat, the car was fine. It took a bullet, but it was running fine. It was running a little bit rough, but there's no reason why the car couldn't have continued. I don't even know what could cause the car to even do that to begin with. Maybe because it's based on an early 2010s BMW, so Rockstar wanted to be cheeky and make it break down after he drove it for like 10 minutes. But either way, it doesn't make sense how it just breaks. The fact that we're able to drive it to the shop and not have to tow it is surprising as well. Chop. I always die laughing at how D is able to just get back up and start perfectly running after getting absolutely nailed by a bus going like at least 30 to 40 miles per hour. This dude would have every bone broken in his body by the impact of a damn city bus, but somehow he's just Captain America or something and is able to brush it off with no problem. It's worth mentioning that he goes down with the bite of a dog, no problem, but he could take the full force of a bus. Marriage counseling. Now this mission basically kicks off the entire plot of GTA 5 because Michael tears down Madrazo's house, which he then has to rob the jewelry store for, which alerts Trevor that he's maybe still alive, and then so on. Now, let's set this straight. I don't care who banging my wife. I am not tearing down a mansion in the hills. That just sounds like a bad idea. Not necessarily because the house is expensive, but you don't know who really owns the house and who the owner knows, etc. Michael was obviously just in a flood of rage and tore down a house because of it, but that was absolutely ridiculous of him to do. Daddy's little girl. Something else that always pissed me off about this mission is how we save Tracy, thugs start shooting at us, and Tracy herself, and she gets mad at you for shooting back and killing the thugs or whatever when they are literally trying to kill her and Michael. Tracy gotta be bottom 5 least intelligent humans, because how do you keep the moral of not killing people when you're actively being shot at and would die had Michael not shot the thugs? Now it is possible to beat this mission without shooting them, but it's much easier to just shoot them, and they're shooting you. This is self-defense at this point. I don't know, but I guess it showcases some of her character. She's not very intelligent. Let's just leave it there. Friend request. request. At a place like Life Invader HQ, there's gotta be high security and checks and balances naturally because you don't want technology to be leaked or many other reasons. How was Michael able to rig the phone that killed Jay Norris without any issues? After the death of Jay Norris, I'm sure they would have backtracked and saw that Michael was one of the last people to enter the room with the prototype phone and instantly make him a suspect, but of course, that never happened. The long stretch. I'm really surprised that after being kidnapped by Franklin and Lamar, D was still down to meet them and Stretch alone at a sketchy warehouse. Of course, his instincts weren't very great as he dies in that same cutscene where he meets the three, but I don't know why he was alone in the first place. He should have had other boss members with him for protection. Casing the jewel store. When taking pictures with the glasses, how exactly does Michael do it? I always thought it would have made more sense for it to just be a video and then Lester can review the footage later, but somehow Michael just takes pictures with his glasses hands-free. Not sure how that happened, and I find it cool that Rockstar sort of did this before the whole meta glasses things came out, which does the same thing. Cameras in glasses did exist in movies and probably in real life before this, but it's cool that Rockstar kind of did it first before it really went mainstream. The jewel store job. The smart approach for the jewelry heist always felt unnecessary. We wear exterminator outfits inside the jewel store, and when Franklin goes on the roof, he also wears the outfit, but no one is up there to begin with, so it's unnecessary. Really, the only thing we needed to acquire was the gas so that we could knock the people out, but we could have wore whatever outfits inside the actual store because everybody was knocked out, so nobody would notice that we're exterminators because everybody is asleep. Mr. Phillips. The only thing that doesn't make sense about this mission is how they treated the Lost in the story. They, as in Rockstar. Johnny Klebitz was killed instantly, and Terry and Clay are also killed very fast as well. The Lost MC could have been a much bigger threat to Trevor, but they were treated as if they were weak pushovers, which is a stark contrast to how they were portrayed in GTA 4. I could talk about this all day long, so I'll just stop here. Also, one more thing that doesn't make sense about this mission is how Dave just walks right into Michael's house at the beginning of the mission. Does he just not lock his door to his multi-million-dollar mansion? Nervous Ron. Once again, as a kid, something I caught that didn't make sense was how we drop illegal goods right next to the Fort Zancudo military base. Pretty sure you couldn't even get somewhat close to a military base regardless if you're dropping unknown crates into the ocean nearby it or not. Trevor and Ron would have been shot down in 2 seconds, jets would have been dispatched to shoot them. I mean, they just wouldn't have been able to make that drop that close to a military base, and I don't know why they chose that area anyway. Trevor Phillips Industries. Why did Trevor have to put Chang and the translator in the icebox when they could have just been taken upstairs or into a back room while the siege took place? I don't know if Trevor would have secured the deal regardless, but locking them in a freezing box certainly didn't help things for Trevor, and he did of course end up losing the deal. Crystal Maze. Trevor is a crazy dude, but how the hell did he manage to siege a house full of like 40 enemies and not die? They gotta have that stormtrooper aim or something, because how did no one manage to shoot Trevor once? The fact that they know the house layout too should have helped them, but it really didn't matter. He just walked in and walked out, no problem. Friends reunited. Once again, kind of going back to the plot of Michael's fake death, why didn't he change his first name as well as Amanda's to avoid any detection in the future? Michael is found to be alive in Los Santos because Wade found a Michael DeSanto with an identical description of Michael Townley. If Michael changed his name to Steve or something and became Steve DeSanta, then he would have never been found by Wade. Shout out to y'all named Steve. I know at least one of you guys are watching here. Fame or shame. Once again, does Michael just leave his door unlocked so anyone like Trevor can just walk right into the house without anyone knowing? I also wonder how Trevor got in because Michael's house is gated. Either way, we learned today that Michael really needs to lock his doors. Hotel assassination. I always found it comical how revealed Franklin is while attempting to take out the target in this mission. We're so close that anyone driving by or anyone at all with somewhat decent vision would be able to see us pointing a sniper outside of the parking garage and immediately take us out or call the cops. We should have been on top of the actual structure to at least give us some cover, but we are just so out in the open, I really don't know how he wasn't spotted. Scouting the port. How the hell does Trevor just know how to handle and maneuver this big vehicle that lifts the containers? Pretty sure you gotta be trained to use this. You couldn't just hop in and instantly know how to use it, but it is quite fun, I will say. A lot of people don't like this mission because they feel like it's slow, but I like it. It's unique and it feels necessary to the story since we get info for the Merryweather heist, and it did introduce this new mechanic, but it doesn't make sense how Trevor knows how to use it. Dead man walking. I always wondered how Michael made it to the coroner without actually being dead. Pretty sure to get there, you gotta be pronounced dead by an EMT or hospital or something. I also don't know how the workers don't see that Michael is breathing, because it's gotta be noticeable. Like, try breathing right now without seeing your chest move, in a safe manner of course. Michael had to do that for a solid amount of time, which seems very, very unlikely. My mom actually once worked at this very corner office, the LA County Coroner, which is what this is based off of, and she said that every body that came through had a specific smell that only a dead body carries. Luckily, I've never smelled such a thing, but the workers definitely would have smelled it on Michael as well. Three's Company. How in the world is Michael able to pass by dozens of floors of the IAA HQ and go unnoticed? He also just chills on the window for a solid minute before he breaks in to rescue Mr. K. I guess the IAA doesn't have an eye test for their agents, because clearly all of the ones we encountered would certainly fail. Hood Safari. Poor Chop is brought along for the ride to a drug deal and ends up having to run back home anyway because the deal goes bad. I don't know why Franklin brought Chop in the first place, because it's not like he'll do much in a shootout with multiple gang members, but he does make it back home safely somehow. By the book. Mr. K's better than me, because he took forever to give up all the details of the target to Haynes and the crew, when as soon as I saw so much as a wrench, I would have told you how old the dude was, his social security number, where his kids went to school, what his wife does after work, I don't care. But he took a lot of work to get anything out of for nothing, because he ends up having to leave Los Santos anyways. The Merryweather Heist. After successfully failing the Merryweather Heist, which is a true statement, because Lester interrupts, citing that we stole a super weapon and that we probably shouldn't have done the job, he says he could have it arranged to be found amongst the wreckage of the ship. But how exactly could he do that? I'm sure officials will be all over the place, and sneaking the weapon you just stole back to the site of the place you just stole it from seems like quite the monumental task. But I guess Lester just knows people, because he did do it. Blitz play. We only escaped the massive shootout with the cops by killing so many of them that they apparently back down from the fight. I don't know what kind of logic that is, but maybe the cops don't want to risk more lives, but then they just let us go. So obviously their strategy of backing down wasn't very successful. I fought the law. The dudes that were chasing on the police bikes don't stop until we get to the opposite coast of the map from where we started. Then when we do stop them, they're like, oh, I try to keep it under the limit, officer. Boom! Like, y'all were just speeding, outrunning us, evading us. What? They were actively evading us, doing like 130 miles per hour. At least come up with a better excuse, like my baby mama's pregnant or something back home. I gotta get back home to my kid, because that just doesn't make any sense. Eye in the Sky. In Eye in the Sky, we steal a Z-Type that is like a $10 million car and is apparently one of one per Devin Weston's word, and yet some random dude in West Vinewood just has one chilling in his garage. It's like that picture of the Bugatti Veyron outside that shack or something that's just chilling right there. Like, how did that happen? Even if he is just using the garage for storage, it's not a great part of town to store a $10 million vintage supercar, so why did he do it? Mr. Richards. When we confront Rocco, he tells his security that he got this and proceeds to get absolutely whooped by Michael before he flees the club. Why didn't he tell the security after he was clearly losing to shoot at Michael? Maybe he has more pride than to do that, but I don't think so. Instead, Rocco and the security just flee the area. Kaida Libre. How did Trevor just manage to kidnap Patricia with the amount of security Madrazo has? He literally had to have picked her up and thrown her into the back of an SUV, which he also stole from Madrazo, because we've seen him drive it when we first met him in marriage counseling, without taking any gunfire or anything at all. Granted, Patricia was with him, so maybe they didn't want to shoot at her because, you know, they would have shot her in the process of shooting Trevor, but they could have tackled him or something. Deep Inside. How is Franklin able to just knock out the actor for the movie here and take his outfit and walk on set without nobody noticing? It would be like some random dude showing up in place of Chris Evans for a Captain America movie. I'm sure at least a few crew members will notice some random dude in place of what I assume is a famous actor, but none do. Minor Turbulence. Of course, a talking point of Minor Turbulence since the dawn of time has been how Trevor ever expected to actually land a massive cargo plane at the tiny Mackenzie Field airstrip. Many theories have been made, but none are conclusive, and I think it was just a bit of a mess up on Rockstar's end. Obviously, Trevor didn't expect not to make it, because why would he do the job to begin with, but obviously the plan wasn't very well thought out. Polito Score setup. It always baffled me how we're just across the street watching the police response to the bank that we set the alarm off of. Wouldn't the police try to question us to get some answers as to why the alarm went off, if we saw anyone, did we see anyone run away, did we see a car? Not to mention how they could have checked the cameras to see if anyone was messing with the alarm system, but they didn't. But maybe the Polito Bay police doesn't care about the town that much. Predator. How did the O'Neills survive that crazy car crash that they endured when Franklin was chasing them? That car legitimately flipped over multiple times and caught fire. They would have at least been knocked out, but they were able to run just fine and hide in the forest. Not to mention one of them somehow managed to snag a rocket launcher on his way out the car, since one of them shoots it at us while were in the chopper with Trevor. They really should have all died in the car crash. The Polito score. I've said this in a video a while ago, but why do the cops just give up searching for us when we hop on the train? It's literally on rails, so wherever we're going is very easily predictable. All they have to do is go far forward of the tracks and they'll find us. They can follow with the helicopter so they'll know if we hop out the train or not, but they never do. The plot armor for the 3 protagonists went crazy on this mission. Derailed. The physics on the train when we jump on it with the Sanchez are quite strange indeed and don't really make any sense. We dip down between the containers, but when we hit the next one, we kind of just bounce back up. When in reality, when we first hit the container, we would have immediately fell between the 2 containers because the wheel wouldn't contact the crate enough. This would be insanely hard to do in real life, and with the train actively moving, it would be impossible because it slightly turns. Monkey business. Steve Haynes describes the toxin we steal from the Humane Labs as being able to take out half of the United States West Coast if the helicopter went down while carrying it, which means that we should be very careful while transporting it, yes? Well, when we make it to the Sandy Shores airfield, Trevor just drops the container right onto a flatbed. He doesn't slowly lower it to the ground and then transfer it with some straps. No, he just drops the container onto the truck. I guess Trevor is a rather reckless person, but then again, who trusted him to handle it in the first place? Bury the hatchet. Michael is just somehow able to board a plane without any trouble the day of when he finds out that Trevor is going to North Yankton. Of course, this was done for the story because there's no way that Michael would be able to board a plane on such short notice without going private, and even then it would be way too sudden to even do that. Not to mention how he suddenly has a bunch of warm clothes when he arrives to North Yankton, but when he left, he did so in a hurry and he didn't have enough time to grab any clothes before he left. But then again, maybe he bought them in North Yankton. Pac-Man. How does the rear door open for Franklin so he could deal with the cops while they're being chased? Pretty sure you can't remotely open the rear door like that because there's probably some latches and other gizmos you gotta undo before the rear door can come down like that. More so is the fact that he is able to reverse off the transporter in the car without breaking it. The car would fall more on its trunk area in reality and probably be unable to drive because it would push in the rear wheel wells, which would register the car unable to steer, turn, whatever. Fresh meat. This mission is such a movie-like mission because it takes a century for Michael to die by the meat grinder before you get there. When Chang Sr. orders his goons to kill Michael, I thought he would have died immediately when I first saw that cutscene back in 2013. But I was surprised when I saw the huge timer in the corner that only went down very slowly. They could have just shot him right there, but maybe they wanted to send a message with the meat grinder instead. Either way, they took way too long to kill him, which allowed us to save him, so it works out in the end. Cleaning out the bureau. The janitor so quickly gives up his clothes and his badge to some random dude who walks in his house and threatens him. He says that it's an excuse for a day off, but that is laughably stupid from a story perspective. Also, after the raid, the janitor must have been stressing because he was the one who basically enabled it to happen. He definitely would have been suspicious after the whole incident occurred. It being a government building as well, there would have been a massive investigation into the incident, but somehow neither Michael nor the janitor are exposed for their actions. The bureau raid. The entire purpose of the bureau raid doesn't and will never make sense to me. Steve Haynes gives the 3 protagonists the order to wipe all files of him from the servers, and in exchange he would clear Michael from the network as well. The problem is that Haynes told them to exclusively wipe all of his files. Along with Dave Norton, they are the only 2 agents with missing files after the incident, which instantly makes them the prime suspects of the attack. Haynes should have also told the group to wipe the files of some other agents that are unrelated to Haynes' unit, so it looks like a random number of agents had their files wiped. It was incredibly idiotic to have only his and Dave's files missing as the agents, which gave plot for the rest of the story. The wrap-up. How did Trevor know where the wrap-up would take place at? More so, how the hell did he manage to land a helicopter in the area without anyone noticing and escape the many armed forces that are present at the standoff? He tells Michael towards the end of the shootout that he has to go before someone clocks his chopper, but how exactly did he manage to do that? Even more so, was it really necessary to bring a helicopter here? His truck would have done just fine, and you can reach a vantage point by using the many ladders in the area as well. Despite all of that, still top 3 missions in the story in my opinion, if only it had been a little bit longer. Lamar down. Honestly, the only thing that doesn't make sense to me about this mission is how Lamar was so naive to go out hours away from the city to a deal by himself that he was tipped off by from a dude who he has a rocky relationship with. He was just asking to get nabbed, and he's lucky that Franklin is a good friend because he went all the way out there and brought Michael and Trevor for backup all for free. Lamar finally learned his lesson after this incident though, and has since not made too many bad decisions since then. But I never said zero. Legal trouble. Why didn't Solomon just text Michael or call him while he was on his way to the airport to retrieve the reel from Molly that he has digital copies of the film? It would have made the whole ordeal much easier, but he only told him that there were digital copies of the film after he had retrieved it from Molly, who didn't survive the incident. Meltdown. How did Jimmy kill the lights from his room? It did make for a comical scene, but to cut the power, he would have had to go to the power box or something, which is probably outside or in some room, but it's not in Jimmy's room. It's also funny how his goggles are real night vision goggles. Those gotta cost like 10 grand or something, because I'm pretty sure that night vision technology is not that cheap. But somehow he manages to have it. The big score. I always found it funny how if you choose the helicopter method, Lester will shoot missiles at the enemy helicopters, which let's just say doesn't make the most sense. I don't even know how he manages to hit these things. Do you know how hard it is to hit a moving helicopter with a missile while the helicopter you're in is also moving? Lester gotta be a secret special agent in disguise, because there's just no way that he would have been able to hit those choppers with an RPG. I couldn't even do that. The third way. Michael brought a sniper to the shooting where he knew it would be a close to medium range standoff because they're inside a foundry. It's a baffling choice that even Trevor doesn't get, as he tells him, "You brought a sniper rifle?" Something that also doesn't make a ton of sense is how Chang Sr. has his son Tao Chang with him at the country club when Franklin kills him, meaning that you could and likely will kill his son in the crossfire of killing his father. Despite this, Tao Chang makes an appearance later in GTA Online. You don't have to kill him to pass the mission, but it's honestly hard not to, as escaping the triads on Franklin's bike is quite a task because it's very slow. Either way, Tao Chang canonically does not die here, but he can. Similar to how Agent ULP can die in the wrap-up, but is not canonical to die. Something sensible. When Trevor crashes his Bodhi, he kind of just sits in the gasoline and doesn't try to run. All of a sudden, a car crash has realistic repercussions when it most matters to the story. Trevor most definitely could have got up and started fighting, but maybe it's part of his character to just sit and accept his demise. The times come. Why on earth would Michael headbutt Franklin while he's pulling him up? You could either drop him off the tower or pick him up, but if you choose the latter, then Michael headbutts you on his way up. Just for sheer survival, he should have pretended to be cool with Franklin and then deal with him later on once he got safely onto ground. But once again, maybe it's part of his hard-headed personality. Now, you may have noticed that not every mission made it to this video. About 20 of them are just small prep missions or can literally be done in 30 seconds like the Bout of Rocco, which I won't even get started on. So they were not worth talking about. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to become a follower. Thank you to my channel members, which for the month of September are as follows. Thank you to Anawack, KOIAER, Karso, Agaro, PAARTHUR, Agent, Joshua, and Nekoshi. I greatly appreciate my channel members. I appreciate you all. Please have a great day or night or evening, and I'll see you all later. Goodbye. Hey. Hey, look, hey, look, hey, look. You better subscribe, because if you do not, I might cry. You better subscribe, I ran up the bands in GTA 5. You better subscribe, because if you do not, you might cry. You better subscribe, because if you don't, I might die. You better subscribe, I'm about to go crazy on the beat. You better subscribe, hey, wait for the beat to drop. Ooh, you better subscribe, hey, you better subscribe, I'm out of breath. You better subscribe.